Welcome to another week of the Buffalo Game Space podcast. I'm Greg Giles.
I'm Ryan Mallette.
John Futscher.
And we're going to talk about some shit. More specifically, video games. More specifically, I canceled my Oculus order.
Why? Why'd you do that?
He's like shiftily looking side to side like, does anybody see how cool that sounds?
Because it's for plebs. Because I thought about it and I realized that, well, for one, they're shipping very slowly, and that's not like to say they should be shipping faster, but I mean, it's just a fact. Their shipping has not been quick, and it's my estimate. I think I was estimated to be like May. And that's also that's also my Vive, estimate. So I would be getting them about the same time, but I suspect.
What's this about a Vive, you say?
Right. So I canceled the Rift and I ordered a Vive because one, I would end up getting them about the same time. And if that's true, the Vive, the biggest thing is, well, not the biggest, but one of the big things is the hand tracking, which Oculus doesn't have. Well, it will, not for a while. So on top of buying this, I'd have to wait, and then there will be a whole other like pre-order thing where I'm going to have to wait for new hand controllers and pay for them, and who knows how much they'll cost. So, the Vive already has that, and also the Vive does room scale, as we've talked about before. And I know I haven't tried room scale, and really haven't. I've tried a little hand tracking with Leap Motion, which was at the time good. Definitely not perfect.
It's gotten better. They actually just released an update to the SDK.
Yeah.
The new Orion version adds a lot of gesture recognition and things that were missing from it before. Like, before you had to write your own finger tracking.
Yeah.
And if you put two fingers together, what does that mean? Is that a command? Is that something? Now it basically recognizes if you put your index finger and your thumb together, you're pinching, and like that's a grab.
Right.
Or, it recognizes. And if you turn your hand around and like hide portions of your fingers, before it would kind of throw up weird gang signs as it tried to guess what you were doing.
Yeah.
Now it does a lot of guesswork based on last known positions and the positions of other like knuckles and whatnot, to not freak out and be like, oh, you have your fist closed with your palm down. And so it keeps those fingers together. So it's actually gotten a lot better. They've been working on a new version of it. I think it's been called Grasshopper for over a year now, which actually adds much better actual hardware to the mix as well as increasing the software. So that could get really cool in the better versions.
It's different anyway, though, because the Vive is just tracking its controllers as well.
Right. Yeah. So the Vive you
never
like
used the Razer Hydra
stuff.
stuff?
I was just going to say, I have, yeah. I've used that, the Razer Hydra. It's more like that. Well, it is. I mean,
it's pretty much exactly
pretty much that, yeah. And that in combination with Room Scale, that's like a whole other layer to VR that people say basically, before you try VR, you can't really communicate how cool it is and like how powerful it is. Mm-hmm. And Room Scale with hand tracking sounds like that jump again. So to me, it almost seems like, I mean, me being a developer and stuff, especially, I feel like I would be missing out on a lot. Even though there's not a lot of content, I still want to experience that.
Yeah.
And, I think we said on our podcast before, the content's going to be a while before we get any real VR content, like of sustenance. Like, everything's, a lot of stuff right now are games sort of forced into the VR setup where, it wasn't a game necessarily designed for that, but
there's a lot of stuff that's more just exploratory. It's very experimental right now. People are just trying out new ways to interact with the world, trying out new things. Like, is this fun? Isn't fun? This is really kind of the Wild West. Yeah. At least it has been for the past couple of years. If anybody who's had a DK1 or 2, you can it's really all been demos. Like, nobody's made an 80-hour sprawling epic in VR, although there are a few that were in the works. I know Lucky's Tale and Eve Valkyrie are probably the closest to actual like full games that Oculus put money into a while ago because they wanted some full games that were going to launch out. There's another one called Chronos. This is a lot like a third-person Legend of Zelda is the way it's supposed to be.
Is that from the Valve developer, the X-Valve?
That's another Oculus one. I'm not sure exactly the name of the studio that's putting it together, but I know that they got money from like the Oculus group put a lot of money into certain development teams to make content because they knew it was important for launch. They knew you need something for people to play when it comes out, and it can't all just be tech demos.
Yeah, right? I guess it was one of the Valve developers. He worked on Half-Life. He left and started working on a Zelda-like for Vive, I believe. So
I know there's a couple of people that are trying that, and the thing with a Zelda game is all the scale. Like how big can you make the world? How interesting can you make it to explore? Like if it's just a small, dull thing, then it doesn't matter what else you do, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how much content's available for each, like as it comes out, because I don't know how many launch titles are confirmed for each one. It's not in the order of hundreds, it's more in the order of tens.
Yeah.
Right. I think Valve said they were looking at like 30, and they were kind of questioning that. And Oculus, I think, said they had like 60 or 70, but more than half of them are basically like 10 to 20 minute experiences.
I was going to say, like most of them are not what we would consider fully featured games. I mean, they're sure like games, but not like a lush experience at the scale of like Fallout 4 or that's an extreme example, but even a smaller game like I don't know
the verdict's still even out if you can even do that. I mean, sure, it's possible, but how comfortable is it at the current generation of stuff? Like, can you actually spend your whole day in this? And some people have tried it and written about it and whatnot, but it's so you could like lose yourself in Fallout 4 and just sit on the couch until your legs go numb if you're that kind of player. But is this going to suck you in deeper, or is it at some point are you just going to be weirded out and like have to stop and walk away? Like where it is actually better to be played in smaller chunk stuff, like the phone. Like people who play on their phone don't play sprawling epics for a million hours.
Right.
They like 5 to 10 minute experiences that they can keep coming back to. The difference with a phone is 2 seconds you can fire it up and play it and put it back down. Whereas, there's a 5 to 10 minute setup and breakdown process for any of these VR things.
Yeah, that's what I was likening it to when we were talking about it a few weeks ago, just how it's really like very small casual experiences at this point.
Yeah.
At least from what I've tried on the Vive.
I suspect that when I get mine, I'll spend about a week or two being like, this is so cool, and then I'll probably put it down for a while because there's nothing to keep me there. That may not happen. It's just kind of what I think.
I mean, that's what happened with the DK1 and DK2 to a certain extent. I mean, some of the coolest stuff with the DK1 and 2 was really just, your first experience with certain things. Like, some of the most fun I had with those was really just showing it to other people. Because the first thing I did when I got my DK1 was just start consuming demos, like what's out there.
Yeah.
Like, because at that time, like it was completely the Wild West. There was nothing. There was no place to even put the stuff. People were just posting them on their own websites or throwing them on Dropbox links and posting them on Reddit or Twitter or something.
Right.
Just being like, hey, go try this. I just made this crazy thing. And so then it was also sweet. I'm gonna go make a crazy thing too. And everybody was just making crazy stuff, but it was all really janky and goofy and silly. And it was fun. But
purely
like,
that
half
it is
of it
VR.
was just. Yeah, it was just like, oh, cool, this is VR.
Right.
But if I spend more than a minute in this, I'm going to throw up.
Yeah.
Plus, you look hilarious at your desk doing it.
Yeah. So, yeah, that happened with the other ones. When a lot of your content is really kind of quick kill, that's a cool experience to have, but not a cool experience to have 100 times. Then once you've tried them all, and then it kind of sits there collecting dust, unless you're making stuff.
Yeah, and like novelty experiences, even if it's a different novel experience, after a while, you just not. I mean, you're like, yeah, okay, this will be a little like thing, but I don't know. I like those in and of themselves, even when they're different. It's just not much to get into with those sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about I agree with them. I'm concerned about the depth of some of these things. Yeah. Some of them are really, by virtue, they're supposed to be kind of casually kind of thing. What's the audio shield one for the Vive?
That's supposed to be. Everybody's going crazy over
say
that
it's
right now.
a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But I look at that and I just see, you know, the first Guitar Hero where everybody's like, oh my god, this is amazing. And then once you've spent and the first night you play it with your friends, you're like, this is hilarious. And people are passing around the little plastic guitar. And then you have a little plastic guitar that sits in your corner for years. Those things they don't have legs unless you're super
exactly.
into it.
In fairness, Guitar Hero was pretty big for a good 5 or 7 years.
Because it also got better. I'm talking about the first one.
Yeah, that's
the first one out the
Guitar
gate.
Hero 2 was really where that took off.
There was a whole ton of them. But Rock Band and all
too
that.
Too many. But
that got real out of control. And then there was just you go to at one point, and maybe I don't know. At one point, you went to Best Buy, and it was all they had, but nobody was buying it.
A whole wall of
it would just be tons of guitars and bullshit like that, and and it had reached saturation. There was definitely a time where you just
gonna blame Activision for that one.
Yeah,
because they really squeezed the juice out of
the
Guitar
shameless
Hero franchise. I always liked what who made Rock Band? Harmonix. I always liked their work a lot.
I never played that one.
They're good. They do good stuff. Harmonix is a studio of musicians, and they give a shit, and they really try. Not that people making Guitar Hero don't.
But it makes a difference because I don't know that this. I think this became a feature, but at least it was a planned feature way back when they were going to put it out. But they were going to allow for independent musicians to add their music to the game through a store or something like that.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I think with Rock Band 3 or something, they started doing that.
Oh, did they? But I think that started. Yeah. So that's not a thing. I mean, you get that for that reason. I feel like that exists because those guys kind of know where people, independent artists are coming from.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I hear good things about Audio Shield.
No, and it looks fun. But when I see something like that, my brain instantly goes, for how long?
Right.
That looks
totally.
It looks like a guitar. I use Guitar Hero just as an example of Guitar Hero's strength was its novelty. It was so much different than other stuff. It was cool, and it's always. You could give Guitar Hero to somebody right now if they've never played it for 1,000,000 hours, and they will have fun playing that game.
Yeah.
But doesn't have legs for most people.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think the social aspect of that game was
Right.
really a big part of it.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've ever not played that game kind of drunk and with a bunch of people around me. That's pretty much the only way I've ever played it.
How does VR fit into that then?
Yeah. Well.
I've been drunk in VR.
All right.
How'd that go for you?
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Here's the meat of the
How
conversation.
drunk and how VR?
I spent more time than I should have one night trying to jump a virtual reality motorcycle over a bunch of buses like Evil Knievel.
Okay. Good.
Good. Yeah, it was weird because
So you're drinking and driving.
oh yeah,
Good.
and jumping
And
buses
jumping buses.
and crashing into them and spinning, and there was
Do you feel that your performance was affected by your inebriation?
yeah, and it was leading to my
It was awesome.
it was leading to my enjoyment of the game because the game was very simple.
Uh-huh.
And
What game was it?
I had played it sober, and it was very simple and very easy. And then I played it later on, and it was not so much that way. But it was fun.
That's
So
one
your
way to adjust the
professional-
difficulty.
Professional recommendation is to get drunk and drive in VR.
Yes.
What was this game?
It's called Jumpstar Heroes or something like that. It was some silly little thing.
Nice.
It was. This is DK1 days. This is really early on.
Yeah, people are definitely going to get hurt doing that, especially with room scale shit.
But yeah, the skiing game was a little difficult. I moved on to also the Battle of Yavin or whatever, Star Wars game where you're flying around shooting TIE fighters.
They had that?
Oh sure,
Ooh.
yeah. I spent a bunch of time doing that one. I wasn't that bad at that.
Nice.
It was more
Was that just like a
It was more just
fan-made,
like I stayed
I
in it
assume?
longer than I would have because I was just enjoying myself too much.
Because your brain was dumb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Didn't know when to stop.
Brains are dumb.
But no, that was fun. Yeah, just flying around shooting stuff. It was just pretty much picture the old X-Wing games just done in VR. It was exactly what it was.
Never played them. I'm a terrible human.
Plebe.
I did get that Star Wars bundle recently though, and those were in there. So
yeah, I don't know if I want to go back and play those ones. I spent a lot of time playing those when I was younger.
Yeah, I hear
I'd rather just keep my rose-colored glasses on than see what I was dealing with back then.
I think Mark said it still holds up. I think he reapproached it recently.
I mean, space dogfighting is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's fairly straightforward.
Awesome is what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so stoked. Like, there's going to be way too much of that stuff. Like, space flying stuff, there's going to be way too much,
and
my game
excited.
included. But yeah, I am, though, because I haven't really, I mean, there's been like Elite Dangerous and stuff. Like, it's been around for a little while, but I haven't really touched any of that stuff since like Free Space 2. And I loved those.
Yeah.
Free Space was great. Yeah. Like, I played, I mean, I was a Jedi Master on the, was it the MSN Gaming Zone or whatever? For X-Wing Alliance. It was like back in the day when you had 2080.
You were Wedge.
I was Wedge.
Yeah.
Like literally, I was the guy who got the name.
Yeah.
and I played it obsessively, like all the time that I was home and could get on the computer with my dial-up connection. I was on there smoking people with my A-Wing.
Yo, A-Wings are sick.
Yeah, that was great.
You know how to use an A-Wing well? You're good.
That was my jam. It's all about going fast. Just being too fast to get hit.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah.
I love the A-Wing.
So yeah, I loved those games, and they totally just fell off the map. Like like right around the same time as like the quick twitch arena shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you got into kind of late 90s, there was like a little slow decline and then gone. Like, then they just disappeared from the landscape.
It's like another genre that like I don't think. I mean, I guess. I mean, the disappearance suggests there was a decline in demand, but I don't. Just knowing who I know and people and stuff, I don't actually think anybody was tired or done with that genre. It just stopped getting made.
Space?
Yeah, like space sims like that.
Like shooter, like flying shooter stuff. And like I remember actually looking specifically for like an arcadey flight shooter, be it in space or in planes or anything, somewhere around the 2003-4 era, maybe a little bit later, and just finding nothing. Mm-hmm. And because I just built a new computer, and I was like, sweet, I want to get the best new thing, like what's out there, and be like, they're not making these anymore. I ended up finding a game called Heroes of the Pacific, which was actually pretty good. It was dogfighting and stuff in the Pacific Theater in World War II.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking like Mustangs and like that kind of stuff, and Zeros, and it was actually pretty well done. There's also bombing stuff in it, and like dive bombers where you actually had to dive down, like get the steep descent and like accelerate towards the water to like drop the bombs on it and pull up before you crash.
Nice.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of really cool stuff in it. That was good, but that was like the only one that I could find that was worth messing with at the time. I had a whole new rig and a new joystick and all this. I was like, this is gonna be great, and nothing to play. I was like, oh man. I played I got the joystick for Battlefield specifically, and then I used it on the other stuff.
For Battlefield?
Yeah, Battlefield 2.
Joystick?
Yeah.
I didn't play that game, but I thought it was a first-person shooter.
It is. Well,
but then
part of it,
vehicle.
There's vehicles.
There's planes.
So that game's smart enough to allow you to use multiple controllers, and depending on what state you're in, you can use different ones. So I use the mouse and keyboard for being on foot and shooting down with my rifle.
Shooting
and
jerks.
If I jumped in a tank or a Jeep or like a driving vehicle, I had a Xbox 360 controller or the equivalent thereof.
I was going to say, holy shit,
how'd you get that?
It was like a dual stick controller that I used that to drive that around. And if I jumped in any type of aircraft, it switched to my joystick that had the throttle on, which is the same one you use for Wedge. Is that Extreme 3D?
Oh, dude,
that's my joystick, and so I would use that for flying helicopters and planes and stuff. And so you jump in a helicopter and you push the mouse and keyboard aside, you grab the joystick, and now you're using that instead. And it was great. But that's why I got it for primarily, because flying a helicopter with mouse and keyboard is garbage. And I liked to fly in those games. I always enjoyed that stuff.
Flying's my favorite thing, so I got respect for what you are doing there. I kind of did the same thing in Battlefield 4, except I didn't go as far to have a standalone joystick as well. But yeah, it's worth it.
Because I remember we played 3 on Xbox 360, and you can buy a joystick and a throttle and stuff for an Xbox, but they're like $140, and you can use them for like 2 games.
Yeah.
And so I was like, forget it. I'll just use my So I got pretty good at using just the joystick to fly the jets and whatnot, to the point where I could stay up for the most part and be up in the air for quite a while before I could get shot down. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while you'd be dogfighting with somebody and you'd see them make like some crazy turn where like they cut their engines and pull like this S turn and blast off in another direction that you physically cannot do with I'm like, that guy has a throttle and a joystick, and I was like, damn it. And it kind of became a running joke because it was like every once in a while you come across me like, damn it, that guy's got a joystick. And people were like, yeah, sure he does, he's just better than you, like shut up. But no, it's like, no, physically you can't do that with the triggers. You can't cut off the throttle like that and jet off and the other thing. It was like, whatever.
Saw people like that in that game. It's just insane when someone's like really good like that. Yeah, really much better than you. Like that.
No, exactly. They shot me down, and they have a joystick. Good for them.
Whatever, their parents bought it for them, and that's cool for them.
I know it's such a high barrier of entry to get in a Battlefield here,
Yeah, no, it was awesome for what it was. But yeah, that was it. It was like that Battlefield wasn't all flying, and the one game that was like this weird kind of World War II thing. And with VR coming back, one of the easiest no-brainer things to do is put people in a cockpit or a driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And so even just in the first wave of DK1 stuff coming out, there was 10 to 15 fly around in an asteroid field, like little things. I made a couple of them myself, just for the hell of it. And fly around in a cockpit and shoot lasers at rocks and watch them blow up. Kind of stuff. Not much to them.
Love it.
It's perfect. There really isn't anything better for VR, that I can think of than like that. Especially for seated stuff. There's just
so you're going to see a lot of that, and that's why Eve Valkyrie is a $60 launch title. It's actually a AAA.
Yeah, I'll probably pay full price for that. Yeah,
it's a full-on AAA release that's got huge production values, and they're going for that market again. Elite Dangerous was like another one that came out with VR support well before the actual CV launches of the other stuff. They've been out there, and that's one people keep talking. And then a lot of people talk about that game too, and they're like, it gets really boring.
Elite Dangerous?
At a certain point.
Really? I've heard good stuff about it, but also, I guess that's probably what I hear, because I don't hear a lot. Like, people say good things, but I've never heard anything substantial come out in the discussion.
It's kind of crazy because a lot of the reviews I would read on it would be, hey, this game takes a really long time to get into. Like, I'm not feeling it. It's boring. And then everybody's like, you got to give it more of a chance. And then somebody being like, game gets dull after a while, like logged like 1,000 hours in the game.
Would not recommend.
After you've done everything there's possible to do in the game, there's nothing left to do. Well, no shit.
They keep expanding it though as well. I think they added like even, new mission type and stuff.
They even added a discounted version of the game for people who only want to play like the PvP stuff. It's like Elite Dangerous Arena.
That's what
that's
is.
Like $10 as opposed to like 20 or 30.
I feel like they do a lot. Like, they've had a hard time getting the sales they needed to recoup the money, and that's maybe one reason they did that. Yeah, like, it just didn't seem like it was selling well for the kind of game it was.
They were going for a niche audience, and so there was actually a price to be paid for that. If you wanted to be in the beta, it was a paid beta forever before they really actually were on Steam where you could buy them. I believe it was $80 or $90 to get into the paid beta.
What so the fuck? The only people were Star Citizen or something.
Well, people were paying it to be part of it as they were building out, because a lot of fun stories and stuff were coming out of it, and they had a lot of cool things that other people weren't doing yet, and it had full VR support and all this other stuff. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of those.
Though, for having full VR support, I actually spent at least an hour trying to get it to work with this the DK2, and when I finally did, it wasn't full VR, it looked almost like it was actually a 3D TV thing, because I couldn't, like, it was a fixed window, almost like I was looking at a screen, but it had the depth of VR. But like, it wasn't like I was in the world in the way that you are normally. I mean, I probably set it up wrong, but still, it was like a lot of work and wasn't exactly fluid.
Well, they were one of the first people to actually sign on for native VR support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of those. I'm actually happy to kind of see it come full circle, and then also, you know, the Twitch arena shooters are coming back with the new Unreal tournament and things like Lawbreakers and what are the other ones that like Valve put out. They're like team based, but they're really just more arcadey shooters
For VR.
No, not for VR.
Okay, I was like,
just in general.
No, just another genre that was dead and returning.
Yeah, everybody stopped playing space shooters. Everybody stopped playing arcadey shooters.
Well,
they
arcadey
wanted
shooters
to play military cover based.
Yeah,
exactly. That's
Call
what
of
happened.
Duty,
It was
Halo.
cover based stuff is what ate it up. And then it's sort of like everybody. I don't know. Somebody picked up Half-Life 2 again one day and was like, "Holy fuck, this is fun without cover! Holy shit!"
Well, I mean, what we've seen even at our LAN parties here, if you fire up, you know, Unreal Tournament or some of those old, it was a Quake 3 Arena or whatever.
That's what we played last time.
You know, those can be a ton of fun.
Yep.
Just like running down a hall at 100 miles an hour, blasting rockets at people, and it's wild and it's fun, and yeah, it's cool to see it coming back.
The skill cap is so high on that shit though. Like, the best players are ridiculous. Like, because that game moves so fast that like, it's actually probably the only game or even activity I look at and just outright say never gonna be that good. Like, I just completely incapable. Like Dota, I get my ass kicked all the time. I feel like I'll get there one day. You know, even with like a little bit slower shooters, but that's just so fast. My brain I can't do it. I just can't.
Yeah, some people that just get in that zone and they've got the muscle memory and the ability to lock it down.
It's crazy.
I know Joe Rogan's talked about it many times on his podcast. He was.
I love when he talks about
that. Unreal was his. I can't remember.
Quake was his.
Quake was his
for sure.
Because he played them both, but I think he had one that was his preference. But how he doesn't play video games anymore because of what happened to him, where he just totally fell into that. Where he was just like, if I'm not playing Quake, like what's going on? Like, where's my computer at? Like I gotta get back to playing Quake because nothing else like just lit up his brain like that. Because it was because you had to be just like every neuron firing like at all cylinders to even keep up with like the top level play that he was trying to be part of. Yeah, he was playing like some really high level shit. Yeah, and you know, just being able to just whip around the map and dot some dude with a freaking rifle from a mile away, and then keep flying across the screen as you're doing the next thing. Oh, God. And it's insanity. When you see some of the top level play stuff, it looks like a bot.
Yeah,
you know, it looks like somebody programmed the thing to just be like pixel perfect.
It really is just almost like just trying to click one pixel on a screen that's going a million miles an hour. That's that whole game. And it's like, I'm not even interested in that. Like, learning how to do that.
Well, I think partially that, I mean, maybe not even really true, but I was just extrapolating that and speculating that maybe that was part of the reason of like the downfall of some of those games. Like, where some people stopped playing them because it just became too hard. There's certain games that just lose a player base because the top tier takes it over and like nobody wants to mess with them anymore.
Starcraft, definitely. That was, you couldn't, I'm pretty sure that like if you had picked up Starcraft in like 2003, no fun.
I love RTSs. I've never touched Starcraft. I just can't bring myself to.
You know what sucks about RTSs is that like the competitive play is so different from what you do in the campaign. In the campaign, you're all like, I don't know, you're trying to, it's like about like there's just like I don't know, it's just like the high level play isn't playful. It's just like technical. Like it's just
mechanical. It's like top tier chess for a little bit, because in the beginning, like top tier chess is like there's, you know, a half dozen opening moves that are rote. That like if you don't pick one of those few dozen open moves, like you're done. But after that, the game always expands into, you know, infinite possibilities of what happens later, of how technically well and you implement your strategy and all that.
Yeah.
But the opening moves of like those RTSs in the beginning, it's like nope, there's one optimal way to do this, and that's what you're gonna do.
And what sucks is the way I at least like to play RTSs is slowly. And
Same.
when you play online, it's all about it's about that there's one or two builds or whatever. I mean, there's probably, I don't know actually if it's like that. I know that there are builds. I don't know how diverse they are, but there are set builds. And then you're just like, you're hitting the keys as fast as you can and you're switching. And it's just like, that's not what I'm there. I'm there to like take my time, build stuff, like
discover technology, get some ore.
Yeah. That's the fun part of RTS.
It seems like an RTS from somebody who doesn't play a lot of them and never really got deep into them. They just never really appealed to me. It always seemed like they were really kind of slow and plodding and deliberate. And take forever to play.
It's way more fun that way.
Then you see the top level play, and they're like, these guys are executing 18 commands a second, and
it's done in 3 minutes.
It's like, wait, what? Like, how did this become a quick twitch game?
I know, right? That's it. You know, the logical progression of RTSs competitively, instead of like Dota, really seems like where those guys should have gone instead of staying inside RTSs and playing those competitively. Like, I mean, Dota is just so much better, in my opinion. In that regard. So it's surprising that people, it's really, I guess, I don't think I think it speaks to Blizzard's ability to balance that it worked, that really only works because they balance Starcraft so well. But not for like that kind of competitive play necessarily, but I think that's what made it possible. So that's how it grew. But just because, I don't know, I just think that, the parts of competitive RTSs that make it fun all exist distilled in Dota, and that's, to me, where I would want to go.
It's not as crazy barrier of entry anymore. Like, you can get into Dota, and you'll probably get crushed, but at least like you can get into Dota and you can find a character and you can kind of build it and you can get better at being reactionary. And there's such a diverse set of characters and styles that it's not as crazy heavy, and like that early game doesn't matter as much as like you were saying about chess and stuff. Like how if you don't do one of those 6 opening moves, someone's going to checkmate you in 3 moves basically. And like Dota, that's not possible.
I mean, you can definitely dig yourself a hole if you fuck up the early game, but
there's
Dota is also designed so that there's room for upset and comebacks and stuff. Yep. So that's true.
So
definitely, like in an RTS, if you go off the rails, you're just fucked.
Yeah, exactly. Like Starcraft is just such a different beast in that sense, where like you need to play a perfect game basically, or you're not gonna win.
Yeah.
Whereas Dota, like there's a little bit of room. I mean, there's not too much room, like the higher level you get, obviously, and maybe it's just the same once you get to like the professional level, but it's like a different kind of the same,
like a different kind of the same.
Different kind of the same.
Getting deep.
My friend tells me that's a very Mallette answer. I'm like, it's kind of this and it's kind of not that at all. Just bad at being direct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like I don't even know what I'm saying there anymore.
So anyway, back to being drunk in VR.
Back to VR even. I did play a couple different games yesterday. Tried out the Vive again. I played Budget Cuts. Have you guys heard of this one?
This doesn't sound like a VR game, but
it is. So
I'm not doubting you. I'm just
sit at a desk and you update some spreadsheets.
Oh. Well, you get to a desk because you want to get yourself a job. You want to make sure you don't get fired from your job, but your job is at a place that is secured by killer robots. So it's a stealth game, kind of. Yeah, it's a stealth game. So you have a little gun that's like a laser, and that's how you move around. So like you launch the little thing, and then you actually have the ability to look around once you launch this little orb, and then you can choose to teleport to that spot. So that's movement in that game.
Which is how a lot of movement is handled with room scale stuff. I think.
Yeah. This one was neat because you actually get to preview where you're going.
How does that work?
Yeah.
So like you shoot this little orb, it goes across the room, and then like there's while you still have this up, Like there's just a little window into where the orb is, so you can actually look around in it and like even like peer around.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. So it opens a window between you and the orb. So you're not like looking through the orb's eyes. Or...
You are looking through the orb's eyes.
But it's on like a screen.
You're looking through your position if you went to the orb. So it's like a preview of where you'll be standing, based on where you're standing currently.
So how are you seeing that? Is it displayed as like a screen in front of you?
It's like a circle, like right in front of you, like right on your gun. You're just looking around. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh, it's on your gun, so you can like point it up.
Well, it's not like literally on the gun. It's like it takes up like a good chunk of space.
But you can move it with your hand.
Right? Does it track with your hand?
So if you want to like look around where you're going to be,
so yeah,
with you. And if you're like, all right, so if I shoot it in the other room directly in front of me, and I want to look to the left of where that was, I move my hand to the left.
Yeah, you move your hand to the left, you can look to the left.
Then that thing I just moved to my left side, and I'll be looking.
So it's like a portal. It's kind of like Portal, even in the sense of like you can look through the portals.
That's why I had to kind of ask and try to.
Because if you don't do that, you fuck. Like it's almost like why.
Oh yeah, warp the person's head like into the other room.
Yeah,
that's very odd and weird thing. Although that was one of the very first VR experiences that somebody made because people are weird. Was a guillotine simulator.
Oh god!
You're being led to the guillotine.
That sounds awful.
You get laid down, and then the thing cuts your head off, and the VR view cuts to like your view just spinning as you fall, and like you look around in the basket with like your head being separated from your body above you.
That sounds horrific.
Yeah, it's pretty demented.
Yeah.
Wow, that would really fuck with me.
I think the craziest part about that whole thing is the separation of the head is weird, but also like just all these like AI characters like just they're like cheering you being killed, so it's kind of like this really weird thing.
Great,
it's even worse than I imagined.
Simulator 2016, sweet. So yeah, this isn't like that.
You're not throwing your severed head into.
No, you're not throwing your head around. No, so you have this little spy gun basically. That's kind of what it is in that universe. So you put your little marker, and then you can warp to it if you want to, or you can reshoot it if you need to after you preview it. So movement felt pretty good. It was nice to be able to like preview in a sense, like rather than just like zapping like you do in some of the other demos.
And oh shit.
yeah, exactly. Especially since it's a stealth game, you don't want to just like jump into a killer robot because they're scary, and I hate them. So they're throwing knives that you can kill these robots with, and I was really, really bad at throwing them, like laughably bad. My friend was trying to help me like throw them. He's just like, you gotta release early, and I just kept throwing them at the ground, and then the robot would be like, kill. He'd just come and like shoot me. I was really bad. The coolest part, that at least, I mean, it's just another like wonderful thing about VR and room scale is that you go through these vents. So like you pull the vent off, and then you just like duck down and peer your head through, and you're looking through it, and I was just like, oh man, that feels so weird.
That's crazy because that's always what you want to do with like the Oculus, and like, you can kind of, but it really isn't.
Like this is literally doing that. Like this, I literally just duck down, peer my head through this hole, look around. I'm like, oh, no robots. All right, we can zap in here.
I saw a thing where somebody was using the Vive in the room scale, and it was that very thing where they were poking their head through a thing, except it was on the floor, so they went to poke their head through it and they just hit their head on.
I was close to that because at one point I was they had like a tiled ceiling, and there was a tile like gone, so I could shoot my gun up there, so I warped up there. You literally have to duck. It won't let you go up if you're like standing too tall. Yeah, so I ducked down, and then what I had to do, I went over to a different tile because, you know, I'm being sneaky, so obviously there's another missing tile that I can go down through. Then there's 2 killer robots in there. So I like literally got my head down to the floor, peered the other way, just to make sure I could aim my gun, the portal gun, to like go past them and behind them so they wouldn't see me. And my friend's like, make sure you don't hit your face on the floor. Because I'm literally there. Like the ceiling is just the floor here. And
don't break my headset.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, be careful. That's the floor. I'm like, I know, I got this. I'm just trying to aim my gun.
Yeah, man.
It was cool. So that demo was interesting for sure. I sucked at it a lot, but eventually I got to keep my job. Because at the end, like
keep your job at sucking.
It's just like a demo, really. It's not like a full-fledged game, but at the end, you get to a desk and you need to stamp the approval paper for you to keep your job. So that's what I did. I won.
Cool.
Yeah, after many tries, I was awful.
What was the other game you played?
I played Job Simulator as well. Lots of work games.
He got himself a job.
All right.
Now
And then I got the
work
job
Yeah.
in the future where the robots are like,
I don't even
hey,
know why
human.
I asked.
What's yeah.
I said I don't know why I asked.
Idiot.
Yeah, this one's that was a bit harsh. It was this one is gonna, if you order a Vive at this present time, this is one of the games it comes with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now my friend had the demo before. I didn't try it the first time I tried the Vibe. This is now the second time. Vive, not Vibe. The Vibe. So I play it. This is like the full game now. There's like 4 different work scenarios.
I was gonna ask, is it? Yeah. Okay. So there's 4.
You could be
so there's like desk, kitchen,
cashier, and auto mechanic.
Okay.
So I did the cashier. So it was basically like working at a 7-Eleven. It's cool. The sense of space is really neat in that game because they just basically like size your workstation to your room.
Like these situations are scaled in a way for room scale,
Yeah.
so that you're running around and doing stuff, but like in a reasonably believable contained space. Like,
Yeah.
Of course, if you're like a cashier, you have about that much room, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're smart about like what's set up in there too. So like even for example, there was like a hot dog like turner roaster thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I flicked a switch, it would be like the merchandise table would come up or something, or like where my snacks were and stuff. So like it would just go down on the desk and come up, but then it'd be like a different display because you have limited space of where you're putting these things. So it was a way to bring those in and out.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do in it is just kind of fuck with people. I'll just pick something up and throw it at my boss all the time because he's just sitting there staring at you, being like, "Hey, human, do work.
Yeah.
Get the money."
Oh, so it's still the robot overlords.
Yeah.
Or you're still subject to robots.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, different robots would come in and they'd all want different items. So you find the item and you give it to them.
Yeah.
Gameplay wise, it wasn't. I mean, at least like objective wise, it wasn't super interesting, but the feeling of it all was pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like exactly that to me. Like, it's the kind of game you fuck with, like Surgeon Simulator. Like, you play it just for like
fuck, I did try that too. I forgot. Oh, I hated it so much.
Yeah, that's got to be really frustrating.
It was really weird because there's 3 different buttons you can use for your hands. And so I'm just put in a situation where there's the heavy on the table and like there's a mirror across the room and you're just a disembodied like the medic head from Team Fortress 2. So like my head's just floating and my hands are floating and it's weird. So there's 3 buttons. So the thumb, index, and then like grip basically. Yeah. And have you both played Surgeon Simulator?
No, but I've seen about 400,000 GIFs of it.
Yeah, it's
GIFs, rather.
GIFs.
First time.
Yeah.
No, I'm Greg Giles with a G, and they are GIFs.
Man, why'd you just rename yourself?
Did I just change my name to Giles for you guys?
Totally.
You are Greg with a hard
Dreg.
Dreg Giles.
Dreg Giles.
Dreg Giles, yeah.
Dreg Giles. Yeah, so man, Surgeon Simulator is just weird because that it was just weird. Like it was just gross. Like I was actually kind of grossed out because I'm not very what's the word for it? Like
squeamish.
Yeah, I'm not very squeamish, but I felt squeamish in that because I'm just like, I mean, it's just constant pressure, and you're doing this thing, and then I'm just like, oh, I'm just gonna like chop his heart out now, and I just toss it over there. It's like, get a new
weird.
one.
It seems very cartoony though. Like it's hard for me. Like I'm surprised that you found it so affecting.
It is very cartoony, and that's I was also surprised.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, all right, this is starting to get weird.
So do you think that's like because of VR? Like if you had played that game,
I have played that game normally
outside of VR. And
yeah, it didn't bother me like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
And I don't know if it was just all the pressure that was happening because like you're way more absorbed in it, and it's like, all right, he's on the table dying, and you got to do stuff, and you're under the time pressure. And
I can honestly, without even being there, I can 100% imagine that it feels completely like it feels more real when you're in the VR. Like,
oh yeah,
and I could totally see how that would create that exact sense of pressure that you felt that you didn't feel when you're playing on a computer.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it was really weird
Yeah.
and kind of upsetting.
I wonder how many people have had that reaction. I'd really like to know.
I totally blocked it out until you mentioned it. I was like,
Yeah, you
oh,
did.
fuck, I did play that game. Yeah, you know, it would be interesting to see that game with not Surgeon Simulator controls. Like, actually just grip and do this, like, and try and actually perform surgery rather than have fucking weird buttons and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I would enjoy that more. I mean, that's kind of the point of Surgeon Simulator, but I'd like to experience that other side of it too, just to be a bit more effective at a thing and see how that experience would play out, you know?
It's definitely more played for laughs and craziness.
Absolutely,
than it is, serious anything.
I mean, it's kind of unplayable from what I've seen. Like, you really can't. Like, you can obviously play it, but it purposefully kind of obscures mechanics so that there's never really a lot of precision that's possible.
Yeah. Surgeon Simulator was interesting when I first played it too, like the normal version, because I've talked before how one of my favorite things about VR is just really how you can mess with things.
Yeah.
Surgeon Simulator was a game that you really could mess with things.
Yeah.
And like, for example, and it would have that like level of VR, like cause and effect in a sense. Like I'd say most VR games I've played have had that, where like, hey, what happens if I do this weird thing? And then something actually like, it speaks to you and there's that agency and it's great. Surgeon Simulator had that. Like, for example, they're like, all right, put this drug in this patient and knock him out, and I put it in myself to see what would happen, and something definitely happened. So
you have every
right.
time. That's like the first thing you've done in VR every time. You said last time you shot yourself in the face.
I did. Yeah,
immediately. Yeah. This time you drugged yourself immediately.
Yeah, not with this. So that's what I did in the normal Surgeon Simulator. So like,
oh, I thought you did. Okay.
Yeah. So at least like Surgeon Simulator as a game lends itself well to my experience with VR, because I keep having those weird experiences.
Yeah.
That I just keep trying
surprising like interactions.
The interactions that you're just like, I wonder if, and then you do it, and you're just like,
that's the best.
Work. That's the best. Yeah, and every time I've done VR, there's always at least one thing like that too, So it's exciting in that sense. It keeps my sense of wonder high with it.
So, I wanna jump over to Firewatch real quick because I don't have a lot of time, and I really want to talk about it.
All right.
So I finished.
Are you sticking around for this one? This is going to be full.
We're going to spoil the shit out of it.
Full spoiler warning.
You're not going to play it.
Firewatch.
You're probably right.
You won't.
It's short. It's only like 4 or 5 hours.
No, that's whatever.
Yeah, I don't think it's the kind of game you'd want to play anyway. That's what I mean.
Oh, damn.
Well, you just...
Dropping fire.
He doesn't play you don't play like story games, really, do you? I mean...
Do you like stories?
Gone Home,
This
Gone
has a
Home
story.
or walking simulator stuff? Do you like that?
Walking simulator?
Yeah, that's like a slang genre that actually exists.
I mean, I play anything when it strikes me as interesting and I have the time to play it.
Right.
It's also a gorgeous Unity game as well.
No, I'm well aware. I know more about the development about this game than I do about the actual gameplay of the game.
That's
because they've written some good dev blogs about how they achieved some of the looks and aesthetics they got, and also how they built some of like the interactions, like the rope stuff and whatever.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So I did finish it, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
I think the big thing to talk about is the climax, or rather lack thereof.
Yeah.
This is the spoiler warning portion.
This is all
the whole thing. Like
spoilers.
we gave it already, and
so if you're still listening and you want to play Firewatch,
go away.
You turn this off.
Go away.
Now,
get out of
crazy
here.
person.
It's good. Go play it. Now get out.
Now pause it. Go play it. All right, now come back.
What I would like to talk about
Welcome back.
first.
All right, now you're back. Hope you enjoyed your gameplay experience. Now you hear what these guys say.
Let's talk about what didn't happen. Because we were starting to... Was that on the podcast, or was that just in person when we were talking about oh man, I think something crazy is going.
Yeah.
All right.
And
let's hear it. What were your thoughts there?
I kind of thought it was going to end up being almost like Her in the end, where
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil that too.
Too
I won't
late.
make that analogy. But anyways, I I thought, yeah, I mean, I was totally sold on where it was going, and I thought not Clementine, Delilah was going to be in on it. I was pretty convinced of it.
In on what? Like, what'd you think?
Whatever was unfolding. I didn't know.
Government thing?
I thought maybe they were being studied and purposefully like put in high pressure situations and studied. Like, I thought maybe there was the whole, like, when it came out that there was like a science like journal and they were recording all their conversations and stuff. I thought that was going to be like they were doing some kind of study on isolation or something like that, psychology or something like that. And it turned out to not. That's
exactly what I was thinking, except I thought also that Delilah was an AI.
Oh, really? So that's actually like kind of, well, if you
so I thought it was like isolation, intense situation, but are you convinced? Like, do they pass the
that would have been
test?
an interesting, that would have been an interesting one.
Because it seemed like you were constantly battling whether you actually believed her and whether she was in on it or not, like you're saying, but also like whether you were made to believe her. Like, she abruptly changed the subject and tried to influence you so many times. I was just like, is this actually a human? Like, am I actually talking to a real person? Or is this like, well, it is a Turing test, right? That's the name for that? Like, are they trying an AI on me?
Right, that's a Turing test.
I was thinking that because I do know these people that have made this game, and I'm like,
people who regularly put out robot
they would
news,
do that.
Right? Yeah. That was a good guess that I didn't think about.
Yeah, or that I was one.
Yeah,
because it was just like, I vaguely knew this history. Like, I was set with this scenario. Now, can I convince her I'm real? Because she wasn't believing me a lot too.
Yeah.
So it's like it could have gone both ways for me. Yeah. But I was, after a while, I was like, oh, I got this. I figured this out.
I think it's important to spell out what ended up happening, because I think there's a really good discussion here, which is that, it all builds up and they've really got you going that like, like
that something's
happening and it's an adventure and it's like you're caught up in a conspiracy almost, and then
there's a love story
and then suddenly without looking for it and even really like it's a thing you totally forgot that there was this kid that had been out in the woods, and then all of a sudden you just find a dead kid and you're like I didn't even register that it had been a part of the story.
I didn't either. I thought there was still stuff going on until you find his dad's like place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh.
Right.
I'm like, oh, it was just nothing.
It was like, well, it wasn't
not nothing. It was none of that.
Right. It was definitely like, I mean, compared to where you thought it was going, sure. Yeah. You could call it nothing. It was something, it was completely different. And, but that's like, that's the statement, right?
Yep.
Like, they did that because by doing that, they can point out, life's not like that. Like, you got to do a lot of like, life is not a movie, right?
Yep.
Like, you can't run away because the everybody in the main protagonist and the supporting are both kind of running from things, and that's why they're out there, and they're caught up in this like almost fantasy. Yep. And then in the end, it's like life, it's just life is more real than that. Yep. And you got to deal with you can't escape your responsibilities.
It lends itself well to what we were talking about last week with it just being like an adult game. It's just like, because these are the interactions that people do have. And you know what? Also, this is how life plays out. And you got to take care of your shit.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, all right, I'm just going to go away forever and this grand conspiracy is happening around me and everything's way more interesting than it is. And it's not to say that life isn't interesting. It's just that, well, it's not always these delusions of grandeur, and that's definitely just a coping mechanism you have going on. And
exactly. Yeah.
You need to
what's important in life is things like taking care of the people near you and around you and not being the hero necessarily.
And taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah,
like which none of those people did.
No,
at least up until that point. Maybe they do after.
They don't really. They leave that really open.
Yeah, it ends. Then you're like, okay, well, you can make a decision from there. But you gotta get past this. It's about grief and loss and all that good stuff.
My only question about the end, the one thing I'm like sort of unsure of is in like the extent to which they intended you to feel that. Like, obviously this game was designed to be an experience and get you into that place,
get you really hyped up.
Yeah, and then just fucking pull the curtain, and then have you standing there like, oh shit, like I really got carried away here or something. I almost feel like it's, and I'm wondering how deep they're going with that. Like, what I mean is, are they almost chastising the player for playing games escapistly? Like, that's kind of what I feel like they're saying in a way. Which is, I think that actually, whether or not they intended it, I think that fits in a way and raises a lot of other interesting ideas. One is that, like, if that message is intended, it's interesting at how at odds it is with the nature, like, to make a game about that and then say, like, don't make a game, like, don't play games.
It's a game about games,
right? Or a game that says, like, don't play too many or something. Like, I feel like the message does kind of say that, because people play games escapistly to get away from shit. I have tons of friends. Actually, a lot of my friends play them escapistly to avoid improving themselves or actually doing something with their lives. And I think they might be saying that with this, because I mean, video games are basically allowing you to do what happened in this game. You can go into the woods and have an adventure and ignore your Alzheimer's wife or whatever's going on in your life and not deal with it. And you can go be the hero, but at the end of the day, you're not. Yeah. And these are the realities that you have to deal with.
Yeah. I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah.
That's interesting though. And maybe it's just saying, just make sure you're doing things for the right reason then. Or at least it's pointing out, like, it's very possible to get really caught up in these things for the wrong reasons, so be careful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that they might be saying that. I gotta think that anyone who plays as much games as all of us, and I think a lot of us have at times been like that. We played games to get away from dealing with reality. I certainly did.
Lends itself to any vice, really.
True. Yeah, it's not like video games are exceptionally bad or anything. They're just a vice that you can have. Right? Yeah, it can be anything.
Yeah, and really, you get really swept up in those things too, and you don't necessarily realize that you're using it as a coping mechanism. And it's, I think it's just trying to lift the curtain off of that a bit. Just being like, hey, like, sometimes we do things and we don't really question why we're doing them. And sometimes you're leaving some responsibilities off, and maybe you should try and take care of yourself and your situation a bit better.
Yeah. It also a bit in that way reminded me of The Line. What was that game?
Spec Ops?
Spec Ops The Line. Did you guys play that?
I have not.
I've not played it, but I'm aware of White Phosphorus.
What's that?
That's the name of the level where the thing that you're probably going to bring up is from.
The end, where they do the whole like. Are you going to play it?
I do want to play that. I've heard a lot of good things. I've probably
really wish you had, because like
I've probably heard the end at some point. To be honest, I mean it's a 5-year-old game now, 4-year-old.
That game does something nearly identical at the end, or not. It could be argued that game does something nearly identical at the end to what Firewatch does.
I've definitely heard pieces of it. Yeah. I mean, if for the sake of conversation, honestly, if you want to go ahead, it's up to you.
I won't, because I don't have much to say about it really, other than to draw the comparison. So that's about all I wanted to do. And I guess I was really just going to raise a question, not really try to make a point necessarily. I just think it's, I don't know.
To me, what it harkens to is Braid to an extent.
Why is that?
Did you play Braid?
No, I've seen a lot about it, but I
would ruin the ending of that too. The ending of Braid is really good.
Braid's been out for a long time.
Yeah, you can ruin that.
Okay.
I'm not going to play it.
So the entirety of Braid, and this is not going to be about whatever the second ending is. There's a second ending that's actually about the building of the hydrogen bomb. This is more so like the first.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's so Braid. The entire time you are chasing after someone you lost, this princess, so to speak, and you are playing through the game with that motivation of, oh, I got to get her back. I got to get her back. Like basically like an ex-girlfriend. Like kind of over time you start to realize that he was just kind of obsessed with her, and he had these really skewed perceptions. And what actually happens at the end of the game is Braid is all about time manipulation. So you run through this level and it looks like she's being chased by this guy, and she's setting off these traps, and you're setting off switches so she can get through, and or no, she's setting them off so you're running through so you can get through to the end to save her. But then, right when you get to the end, the whole level plays backwards automatically.
Yeah,
and you start to realize that she was actually running from you the whole time because you're an obsessed asshole.
Yeah,
and you're really just like, she moved on.
Yeah,
and you didn't.
Yeah,
and
that's interesting. So you go in that last moment, you go from being the hero to the villain.
Yeah, like suddenly, like it just happens, and you're like, oh God, like what have I done?
Yeah,
like I became too obsessed this entire time, and like then it just turns it on its head completely, like masterfully, and it was just such an incredible moment.
Yeah,
and like while that was like that was an epiphany moment, Firewatch is not an epiphany moment, but it's like such a deflating moment.
Yeah,
but it does something very similar where it's just like, here are all of my expectations, and you know, Braid, it was about obsession. Firewatch is about like escapism.
Yeah,
and it's just like, whoa,
yeah,
what happens?
Yeah.
What have I been doing?
Right. Yeah, like, yeah, and people do not I don't remember there being much backlash to that ending in Braid, but there seems to be a bit to this. People are kind of upset by it. They feel like
and
it's a non-ending or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe it was because Braids was just, it was a very different mood for it. It was just like I said, it was kind of like an epiphany.
Is also, it's an ending.
Yeah,
it's like everything leads up to that point. Just because it kind of flips the script doesn't make it not an ending to what is clearly a game based on levels, and you're working towards it, and you see kind of the end. When you get there, you know you're going into the end.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
It's not coming out of left field, hit you. You know,
you don't.
It's not a sucker punch being like, hey. I mean, from the story perspective, people can say it, but it doesn't come out of left field in the sense of you don't know it's not the end. Like, it sounds like at the end of Firewatch when
it kind of just
I
happens.
still don't quite understand exactly what happened. You guys didn't really say. It sounds kind of like you're.
I mean, yeah, because I guess I'll just like spell it out, which is, I mean, I guess I wanted to it's hard to really explain it because the game,
it builds it
the way it happens, you're just not expecting it. So what you find out really early in the game is that the lookout tower you're in, and the one that you're manning, and this is your first season in this tower. The last guy, or maybe the guy before him, one of the two, was manning it and actually brought his kid. And then at some point in the middle of the summer, they just went missing. And Delilah is his supervisor, so she's just like he was supposed to be reporting to her. They just went missing, and she just like was kind of like, oh fuck it, whatever. And
she thought they went home or something.
Yeah, she just thought they bounced, you know. And what actually happened was the kid fell off a cliff basically into a cave and died. And then the dad, he is also like unable to deal with reality. He just stayed there and lived in a cave that he built for himself.
Yeah, he was just in hiding for years.
So
he would fuck with campers and take their stuff, so he had supplies.
That, and to keep them away, like he would try to drive people away by fucking with them and stuff,
so no one would find it.
But what ends up happening from your perspective in the story is you are trying to figure out what's going on. Whereas a lot of people, I think, you know, they just leave or move on or whatever, and you are trying to solve this mystery, and then you find out. You know, it builds in a way that you're just like, you find like all this weird stuff is happening.
There's like notes of your conversation,
and then you find like a transcript of your conversation, and then actually what happens is like the guy kind of fabricates a story. The guy that is Ned, the guy that's hiding, he actually starts, once he's been discovered, once you find the transcripts and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then from that point on, he started kind of fabricating a story of there being a research site there with all this equipment. And there was all that, but there was nobody doing research. It was empty.
They were, what were they doing research on? Elk?
I don't remember.
Elk or something, I think.
Yeah, but
he planted the notes there, so it made it look like they were doing research on you while they were away for a couple weeks, and there's just all these things
just to cover his own.
Yeah, he was just trying to lead you off the trail of finding the body.
So from the player perspective, you're it's cool. Like you find you're like, it's building, and you're like, where is this going? This is crazy.
You're
and like,
oh, it's nuts. That's why I'm thinking like it's an AI or something, or there's aliens or whatever.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then
because when you find all that like radio equipment and stuff, like it could take it could leap to like a technology kind of like theme.
And then it just completely deflates.
And then
suddenly,
and then
like very suddenly.
And then you don't get a lot of time after that. The game ends pretty quickly after that. So you're kind of just like, what the fuck? Like I think a lot of people felt like they were tricked maybe and didn't get an answer to this other thing they really wanted. And, which is kind of the inherent problem with what they did, which is like when you deliver your message that way, like it's effective, but polarizing because.
But it sounds like they have a character in the game that's actually literally tricking you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, we got tricked.
Yeah,
no shit.
Well, I don't think people... No, I haven't heard anybody say that. This is me just sort of musing on
making shit up.
Well, I mean, basically. But thinking about reasons people might get upset by the ending. Because there's no reason to really get upset about it.
No, there's not. Well...
it's not. I don't know.
In America, at least I know in film it's an issue. There's an aversion to anticlimax or... like even just negative endings,
which is interesting because I think both of them, Jake and Sean, who wrote it, I know Jake at least, and I think Sean went to school for film.
Yeah, that was one thing I did learn. I went to UB for it a little bit, at least like part of my major, and that was one thing that is very different between like European cinema and American cinema. American cinema is generally
they always want a happy ending.
Yeah, because American audiences really are averse to that.
As shown
in Europe, they're a little bit more like in tune with that, and they're okay because like, and realistically, that's more like what life is, and like it's not always a happy ending, and it's not always like this big grand conclusion. And I feel that like Firewatch hits well on that, and that's why like I mean I'm not averse to that. It really like I don't think I really put it all together until I read that Duncan Fife article I sent you.
Yeah, that put a lot of things in perspective. For sure.
And it was just like. The anticlimax is a climax, and like that deflating feeling is exactly what they wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah,
it's
and they delivered
super
it
interesting
in a way that only games can.
And it's just extremely rare in games as well.
Yeah.
So,
and they didn't tell you how to feel about any of the things that they were doing. It was more you're putting it together in your own head. You're creating this whole story, and then when that kind of turns out to not be true.
Yep.
Well, now you got to rethink what you were thinking.
Yeah.
And people don't like to be wrong or tricked.
Yep.
They never want
exactly, and that's what I'm saying.
Some people really just can't even handle
America.
Thinking critically about any, like, they're just like, tell me what to think, and I'll repeat the talking points.
Yep.
And I'm going to just avoid cognitive dissonance at all costs.
Yep.
And anytime you tell me something that's against it, I'm just going to either ignore it or change the subject or whatever.
Yep.
And in this scenario, they can't do that. They're just like, oh, I built this whole thing up in my head. I thought it was going this way. I was wrong.
I mean, the game definitely
I'm mad now.
The thing is, though, the game does give you red herrings, like, purposefully to get you kind of rolling in that direction. Like, there's a moment where you're talking to Delilah on the radio, and she goes, hang on a minute. And then she's like, what? No, how could he know that? I don't know. Don't know. I'll let you know if anything changes, but no. And then, like, it kind of turns out that that has nothing to do with you.
It's just work bullshit.
It's just her like talking to somebody else off like somewhere, and you just happen to hear it.
Yeah.
And the game kind of makes you. It definitely does. It does it purposefully to make you think it's about you.
And it gives you an option to be like, "What was that?"
Yeah, it gives you the option to ask her about it or not say anything.
Yeah.
So, which I said nothing because
I didn't say anything either. Yeah,
I'm on.
I'm like, I'm just gonna keep a note.
You dig your own grave. Yeah.
But again, they're setting the stage and kind of acting like you're going one way, and they're not saying you're going one way. And if you in your mind like, okay, it's going this way, I see what's going on here, and you start making conclusions, and then new evidence is introduced that you don't incorporate it in that. Be like, no, I'm still thinking, hold on, she was talking about this other thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you're kind of going down that road, it's people like the simple story sometimes, and sometimes people like the complex thriller of the whole concept of at its core, what this game could have been is a fairly straightforward whodunit.
Yeah.
It could have started with you finding a dead kid and then being like, what the hell happened to this kid? And the whole game could have been all about you finding clues to like what happened to the kid, where'd he come from, who is he? Right. And the whole climax could have been like your typical, it's thunder and lightning and it's raining and you see the guy back in your cabin and you go back to your cabin and he's there and he confronts you and he's like, that's my kid, and
that's literally and he does the whole scene.
he does the whole villain's exposition and then gets shot right before he kills you, and it's all happy and crappy,
except nothing
happy and crappy.
It's all so much heading there too. Like there is the thunder and lightning scene and he's in your tower and you know it, and she's like, I just saw him up there, and you go and like there's all that, and then like right at the end, like he leaves you an audio tape. He's like, yeah, sorry about your wife and stuff, and like and that's it. He's just like, don't look for me, I'm gonna go away. And like I don't know, you don't know what happens to him, but it's just like, all right, that's really fucking sad.
I also though did notice, I did say that the game gives you red herrings, but it also does kind of give you also other clues that like that the story you've made up in your head is like.
But it does. Right before you go, I think I get what you're about to say. Is like it makes you question what you're putting together. That like the obvious kind of red herrings that people would start putting together of like, oh, it's this government conspiracy, blah blah blah. Are there clues in the game such that if you replayed the game,
yes, that's what I'm saying. That's
you
what I'm trying to say.
could figure out exactly with no unequivocation that this boy fell off a cliff and it's the dad fucking with you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think you can. I think because I went back and watched. I have a guy that I watch Let's Plays of, and so every game I play, he likes the games I like, basically. So pretty much any long narrative game I play, I go and immediately watch him play it and see what he does. And so I sat there, and there's stuff in there that, like, one is one of the smaller ones is part of what you think is happening actually is you find these two girls skinny dipping, and they're like drunk teenagers or whatever, and they're like party girls and stuff, and so you catch them, and they're setting off fireworks, and you have to go down and be like, what the fuck, you're gonna start a fire, because that's your job. And so when you do that, they call you a creep, and they're just really mean to you. And then so because of that, you think part of what one of the possibilities, and the one that is really driven, the main one that they kind of keep you going with for a long time, is that these girls are just pranking you and doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, because it's alluded to that they're with other people too. So
one of the ways you find, so when you're following when you're going to investigate these problems that are happening, like a line gets cut or something like that, you're finding all these beer cans, and it's way more beer than like teenage girls can drink.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and also you'll find, like, the first time you ever find the beer cans, it's also with a bottle of liquor, and it's after you finish the story, you realize, oh, these are Ned's cans, and they drink the liquor. There's no way they were drinking all this beer. That, like, why would even teenage girls drink all? Like,
you've been camping, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, they wouldn't do that. They would, like, girls like that wouldn't drink like that and leave all those cans behind. Like, they could, okay, but like, I think that's a little. I think there's evidence in that. There's even a bigger one though, which is that at one point you find a camera. You find a bag kind of like hanging on a branch. And it turns out to be
ropes and camera.
Well, it turns out to be and it turns out to be the kid's bag.
Yeah.
And so you find the kid's bag with the kid's stuff in it. And also when you're standing there and you look up, there's evidence, and you don't think much of it, but when you look up, there's like a tapestry like flapping off the top of this like cliff. So there's clearly something up there. Later in the game, you go up there and you find the kid's hideout is up there. So
that was below. Oh, okay, cool.
So it's right.
Gotcha.
So that's where his pack was, and that's where he wanted to get it back. Like that's why he had that crazy thing in the end to build that contraption, because he didn't want to leave his spot, and his bag was down there.
Gotcha.
So there's like
he really didn't like climbing.
That there's like, if you're paying attention, like there's stuff that you're like, wait, this doesn't quite add up. But also, it's really easy to skim over when you're.
And it's also,
you got the rose-colored goggles on.
But it's also,
you're like, conspiracy. Let's go.
All the stuff that you just said makes sense in like seeing what they are with hindsight, but none of them have raw deductive evidence that would allow a first-time player with no foreknowledge to say, I know what's happening. The kid's at the bottom of a cliff.
Yeah.
No,
and
I
the
don't
dad's
think
protecting
so.
his body. Like
No.
it's definitely a swerve. Like there's no there's no way for somebody like sometimes you're reading a book or watching a movie and it's like a thriller whodunit kind of thing. Like you're trying to figure out who the murderer is.
Right.
And you can be like, yeah, she did it.
You can pick up on,
I got it. Like I saw the stuff earlier. Oh no, the note was on the table and she hates this girl or whatever. Like, and that's like a swerve or whatever. And sometimes you can't do that because they just don't put that stuff in there.
Yep.
Right.
They just be like, nope,
They give you nothing to grab onto like that.
it's a swerve because it's a swerve. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever seen Red State?
No.
I have not. No.
All right, so it's
Kevin Smith.
It's a
right?
Kevin Smith movie,
Yeah.
but it's not like any other movie he's ever made. It's literally like kind of like a horror thriller about like this kind of religious group that thinks like the end of days are coming or whatever. And but kind of without really giving it all away, not that it necessarily matters in all the spoilers we're talking about, but the bottom line is the way that he deals with tension in the story and the fact that it's not really a comedy at all. It's really like a thriller, like what's happening, and there's these characters you kind of follow through the story. Every time he was writing the story and he felt like he was getting into a spot where the audience could see where he was going, he would stop and write the turn. And he would stop and just be like, okay, now this happens instead. What now?
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is a succession of like 20 of those.
Okay.
It's not just like, it's not like M. Night Shyamalan, like, hey, there's a twist at the end.
Yeah.
It's like there's twists like every 5 to 10 minutes where it's like, oh, I see where this is going. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see where, this kid's going to go here. No, that's not what's going to happen. Every time you think you guys like, oh, I think that guy's going to make it. No, he does not making it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, that was kind of like his MO in writing it, and it led to a very interesting thing. Not all it's a divisive movie, and some people are like, oh, I loved it, or something like it didn't make any sense, or I didn't see it. But that's how he wrote it. It's like there's no way for you to start Red State and be like, I see where this is going. It's physically impossible. And if you say you know where it's going, you're a liar.
Yeah.
Because there's no evidence.
They was written so that you wouldn't. So
it's impossible. You either read ahead or you're lying because it's literally impossible to have the evidence does not exist to tell you what's going to happen.
Yeah, this isn't like that. I mean, I feel like I feel like the player kind of like they never give you any like irrelevant information. So when you find a bag like that and you see the tapestry like at the top, I didn't think anything of it, but I didn't know the game was really that deliberate, like with that part or something. You know, like
I didn't even think twice about it.
Yeah,
I was like, sweet find.
Yeah, exactly.
Great bag.
Yeah, it's like like they don't give you enough to figure it all out, but what the things that transpire when you replay them with the perspective, it reeks of what.
Yeah.
Like I said, like when you find these beer cans, like the way you trace the trail of the guy and find all these beer cans and stuff. While the game was all like we were thinking it was these girls. Like I said, it now when you replay it, you think like, wait, these girls couldn't, even if they wanted to. This is way too much beer for like teenage girls. Like you find a lot, but like I know having
And you couldn't. I mean, even one of the first things you see is a missing persons poster, and she explains to you about like these people that were there and stuff too.
And she tells you outright they went missing and nobody ever found them. Nobody knows what happened. And you kind of shrug it off, right?
I might be wrong, but I feel like when you first see a mystery figure and she's asking, can't you like suggest it'd be him?
I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
I feel like at some point that comes up where you could just be like, it's Goodwin.
Actually, and Ned, you see him really early in the game.
Yeah.
He's like standing in a cliff. It's a silhouette, but he shines a light on you, and you're like, who is this guy? And it's near your tower, and I think it might be even right before. No, never mind.
It's like at the end of your first or second day.
Yeah, it's really early. So like, I forgot about that. Like, it just like that happened, and I was like, weird, and then I moved on.
Yeah.
So the game does often like give you these weird situations that you then like, for whatever reason, as players,
you blow it up.
You just blow it off, right? And when in reality there was.
You blow it off into something bigger.
Yeah, I was
conspiracy.
You guys, you're like, as players, and you guys both are just like, you're like, blow it off into nothing. He's like, blow it way out of proportion. You say like it's the most part. Wait, no.
Which I totally did though, because I was just like, well, there's the man, there's this notepad, and then I got knocked out by a man, and like there's all this stuff, and the girl's tent was torn up. I didn't do that. Like there's all this shit, and there's a note to some dude that fucked with something. I was like, well, it probably was a cliff guy, which it was. Fucking with them, Ned. Is it Ned?
Yeah. But what are you saying? What
how their tent was all torn up, and they're like, "Fuck you, creep!"
Right? Yeah.
Like we're leaving.
But they thought it was you.
They thought it was me, but it was him.
Right.
Yeah. And he stole their beer.
Right. So like and like so there's and so there's
like I connected
right there.
that at first. I was like, well, there's a mystery figure on the cliff, and he probably fucked with him because I didn't do that shit.
Yeah.
Or did I?
Part of my
the game makes you think maybe you did too. It's like, oh fuck. Like you start like at one point you have a weird dream. You wake up in the middle of like talking to your wife on the radio.
Yeah.
Like so they're setting up that maybe you're also delusional. Like there's so many different like ways that whole grand conspiracy could go, and then it's nothing. It's just
they don't pull it out of thin air by any stretch though.
No. Yeah, like the evidence is there the whole time. It's just like
I get the fact that it's not completely. I'm just saying, most people aren't gonna. It's not the evidence isn't there for you to know what's happening.
You can't guess that it's a cover up of a child. Like that's too far to guess on what they give you.
I don't think it's possible to like not get grand ambitions about what's going on.
Right, and so the stuff that I heard you guys talking about, like, so I heard maybe. The woman on the radio is an AI.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm an AI.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm insane.
Yep.
Maybe there's a government conspiracy.
Yeah.
Maybe all these things. And like the fact that you guys were just spouting all of these things based on the stuff that you're describing now, which is a fairly rote set of evidence if you're looking at it from a human being.
A sober perspective.
A sober perspective of somebody who hasn't seen a ton of sci-fi and,
right.
and read Philip K. Dick novels and like all that kind of stuff.
See, and that's the thing. And like I almost and I think that part of this is also a statement on video games, which is that games are they're always these grandiose adventures. Like it's rare that you don't see a game where you're the hero or it's always there's a lot of power fantasy. You got to be the guy, that. Right? And exactly.
You're not just some guy in the woods wandering around.
You're not an average ass dude.
Yeah,
like
you're not, obviously something special will happen to me because I'm Henry.
Yeah, and that's
I'm the main guy.
It's a really unfortunate thing in games that again is kind of like changing. We need like real stories like this because.
Well, what's really kind of funny is that all of the things that you just described, or I just described that you guys described what you thought, they were all, you were looking for the swerve. You're like, something's coming. I'm a computer. They're all computers. Something's coming it's not set up the exactly way that I think it is.
When I find out it's going to be crazy.
And when I find out what's actually happening here, this is going to blow my mind.
Probably.
And the actual swerve is, no, this is real life, stupid.
Yeah.
Probably like comes from our.
And if you had shown, and so what I'm thinking right now is you show this, if you gave this to somebody who didn't have that background and all this stuff.
Yes.
If somebody who was actually like a forest ranger who was not well read, who was not a game player, who was not a movie watcher, didn't have, 30 years of pop culture under their belt, and you showed it to them, they'd be like, "Yeah, there's a kid out here."
Yeah. What about that kid they were talking about?
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't
it definitely plays on preconceptions of gaming.
Yeah, they know, and they
like,
intentionally plays on them. Yeah, for sure.
I'm really curious if doing a second playthrough, knowing things, how effectively you can keep the conspiracy talk down, like with your decisions.
You can play most of the game saying nothing.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
There's actually, I read an article where somebody just ignored Delilah the entire time.
Yeah, because she's definitely feeding into it.
Yeah. So
I wonder how much like you could actually go through with a decently level head about things and just be like, oh, well, it's probably good when it's on here.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can achieve that in a sensible manner, I think that's like the most fucking interesting.
Does this game have multiple endings, or is it all leads to
no?
one
it's
point?
I think it all comes
there
back
is
to
there
one
is
point.
one sort of divergence at the very end. You can a helicopter flies in to like lift you out because the fire's spreading and it's coming to overtake where
the woods
you are
on fire, by the way.
Yeah, there's a fire. There's like this thematic fire building the entire time.
Yeah, which also thematically is totally building towards everything too.
Yeah. It does exactly what it.
That'd be funny if the fire just went out the next day. It's like
that would be really funny actually.
So there is there's a fire coming too. So
yeah, it's growing the entire game too.
Yeah,
it's just
it grows over the course of the game, and by the
so
end,
it started before you started. So you don't screw up something in the beginning where you let a fire get started.
No, it does start after you get there.
Do we know? Is that known? It might not be known.
Those girls' fireworks right in the beginning.
No, it wasn't even them.
It wasn't any. I don't think it's anything you do. I'm pretty sure
it could have been like
it might like a lightning strike or something. Maybe, but
it's contained. And then there's a second fire though. That the good ones start that. I forget. It's kind of inconsequential, really. It's just I love how thematically it built.
Which one was that? Where was it?
The second fire.
Where was that?
That's the one that spreads the most, isn't it?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another one.
There was a big gap in time when I played this. Like
there
I stopped.
Yeah.
I like stopped and didn't play it for like a month, and then I picked it back up. So,
gotcha.
Some of the stuff I forget, but I was gonna say another thing. What was I gonna say?
Well, that's good.
We were talking about thematic fire building.
The ending.
Oh yeah, helicopter.
So in the end, the fire's there. It's like the smoke is engulfed. It's everywhere, and everything has this glow from the fire, and it's happening. And so they send a helicopter to lift you out. And it's a fairly routine thing. Like the game doesn't it's that moment is, though dramatic, also routine. Because it's just sort of like they don't come in like, holy shit, get out of here. It's like they come in like
you're not in the middle of it.
Right. Right. Yeah. They come in like, hey, it's just a routine evacuation when fires happen.
This is how this goes.
Yeah. Like you're not really in danger.
They weren't able to contain it, so they're like, all right.
So before you go to get on the helicopter, the helicopter lands and there's a guy like with his arm out, but you can so you go and get on, but you can actually turn around and walk back up to the tower, and then the game just ends. So that it kind of implies like suicide, I think.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you do actually. There is somewhat.
Why would you do that?
You don't want to deal with your problems,
man.
Yeah,
you don't want to deal with. You don't want to go back to reality because like
shit.
Because really,
I didn't know that.
Because like, what feels like the right thing for this guy to do? He's there because he was married and his wife got Alzheimer's and just basically doesn't know what reality is anymore. Young. So yeah, like at a fairly young age. So she's in Australia with her family. So instead of him dealing with that situation, and like the game kind of does make a sort of prescriptive statement on what he should do. I feel like there's an implication that he should be, and I'm not sure that that's what he should do personally.
Well, she pretty much literally tells you that too, doesn't she?
Yeah. They want you to kind of feel like you got to go do that, right? So, that's, I guess, the choice you're actually making at that moment is, do I go deal with that or not? Or do I just, because he just clearly really doesn't want to. Because I can understand, like, that's a hard situation for no reward, really. Like, when somebody has that kind of condition, like, you take care of him and it's thankless.
Yeah.
I
mean, he's just got to deal with it, though, regardless. So either, like, go and choose to do that or at least go and, move on if you need to.
Yeah. So there is that choice in the end, but for the most part, it is.
That's pretty crazy, though. I had no idea.
It's interesting,
about that.
yeah. For the most part,
it's like, I'll take the fire.
yeah.
And the guys in the helicopter are like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, he's like,
let's go.
He said he didn't want to come.
He's gonna wait it out.
Where's Henry? Oh, yeah, he just went back into the building. You didn't wait. Maybe he was getting something.
Yeah, maybe he just forgot his keys.
No, I just kind of didn't say anything and turned around. All right.
I figured he wanted to kill himself.
That's my first guess.
It's his responsibility. Oh, he forgot his keys? Oh, shit.
Fuck.
So the way the narrative is there's actually a lot of the way it plays out is fairly linear, but the moment to momentness of it is really diverse. Like we were talking about last week, when you find these girls and they're like skinny dipping and drinking and partying, they're like, they're way out and you can't see them and stuff, but they have a radio by the thing and it's just like blaring like 80s fun party music. This takes place in the 80s, fun party music. You can actually do a surprising amount of things in that situation that the game recognizes, which is you can throw it in the water. And then, like, when the radio conversation comes up, yeah, they get mad. And then when you talk to Delilah, you're like, yeah, through the radio in the water. We all did something different, which was interesting, too. Yeah. So, like, Tom threw it in the water. What did you do?
I just turned it off.
Yeah, and, like, which is the, like, straightforward option. I picked it up, and I just took it with me.
He just started walking away.
And I just carried it. And then
they're screaming at him.
Yeah, and they're like, you're taking our radio, you dick. And then on the radio, when he talks to Delilah, he then says, yeah, I took their radio. So the game actually...
It's very good at monitoring that stuff.
Yeah, like, it'll in these moments, there's a lot of ways you can handle them that it'll recognize. Mm-hmm. Despite the overall sort of linearity of it, actually, there's a lot of granular sort of narrative possibilities that you can explore.
Yeah, you definitely have a good amount of agency throughout.
It
doesn't change the overall story
right,
of the game.
Right.
But the moment-to-moment
the way you handle
interactions and story
that
are affected by you.
Yeah, there's a way to deal with stuff, and it recognizes many ways to deal with them.
It starts kind of even multiple paths, too, because you set up your backstory a bit.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah.
Branches out, and then it all comes basically
to that one moment.
Yeah. Well,
I got to get going. And
good talk.
Yeah.
Thanks for narrating that, being the mediator there, because
this is why I think it's great to have somebody to do that, and I wish we could do that more.
Yeah. Being impartial, just being like, all right, what you just said doesn't make any fucking sense,
right.
you idiot.
You babbling monkeys need to stop.
Back it up. That was insane. Yeah.
That was good.
No, it's really interesting. Like I said, I know more about the development of the game than the actual game, so this is actually interesting to me just to hear more about it and what happens in it and how it kind of plays. And I might end up going back and checking it out anyway. I mean, even without all the head games, just to kind of see some of the stuff.
There's a lot of really
it's fun on it. It's fun even if you know the
good choices that they've made with it, and
I do find it kind of depressing to hear that in typical fashion of the intertubes, people have decided to get upset about the ending.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I also wonder if that's even like, exactly. Yeah. It makes me question how widespread that even is.
Well, even
a couple vocal people being annoyed is one thing.
Duncan even cited PewDiePie's reaction to it, which is like, wow, I'm really fucking mad about that ending right now. I'm really upset. This sucks.
That's pretty much how I expect him to.
It's also it's kind of an upsetting ending, right?
It is. It purposely does.
It's upsetting in a lot of ways.
Shitty.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is just because the ending is upsetting doesn't mean it's a bad ending.
Right.
And people equate
that's
did you get the good ending or the bad ending
there that I was getting at earlier.
It doesn't mean that the good thing happened or
Yeah.
Because I guess I know we have to wrap up, but when you talk about the American ending, there's one thing that I bring up and drives me crazy was I Am Legend. And what they did with that.
Yes.
And the whole point of that entire story and even the way they actually shot the movie, they actually shot the movie the way the story is supposed to end. If you don't know, the freaking short story is 1,000,000 years old, so tough. Basically,
at this point in the cast, everything you know and love may be spoiled. So just
Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole time. I've never even seen The Sixth Sense, and I know that. Anyway,
it was Fredo.
the whole point of the story is that in this post-apocalyptic world, he goes kind of overboard and crazy and starts like killing all these people and never even gives it a chance.
I remember this. Yeah.
That like maybe they're actually still there, and like why they're fighting against him and like being crazy is because he's the one murdering everybody all the time. But in the movie, it's just like, well, good thing he killed those monsters, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, well, the way that they originally... You can actually find the original ending. It's been leaked on YouTube. So
really?
It's on the DVD and stuff, too. Blu-ray.
Yeah, well, because they talked about it, because they actually shot the movie the way the story is supposed to play.
The audiences did not like it.
And in the test screenings, it got, like, universally destroyed by all the test audience said, just like, what the hell was that?
Yeah,
like,
so...
That's a bad ending.
Remind me, doesn't he, like, blow himself up or something at the end? Or something blows up?
So
there's a grenade
in the real ending, the one they didn't use. Basically, the bottom line is there's a whole thing where he's got like a zombie kind of kid or whatever down there, and he's like testing on him and shit.
Yeah,
and he's got this kind of panic room that's like a glass room in this basement with like a couple of things stowed in there, and they get overrun and they end up down in this basement room, and he kind of goes into the panic room. And the zombies break in, and they get down into the basement, and they all come running in, and they see that he's contained, and they all kind of, like, chill out and are like, you know, you just stay where you are, and they get the kid, and they walk out, and they leave. And he's just standing there like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like...
Oh, like he didn't... Yeah.
If I stopped trying to kill them all the time.
They were totally cool. Like, oh, I'm an asshole.
we just want
totally
the
I'm the monster ending. And like that's the end. And like universally just like, nope, that's a bad ending because you made me feel bad about the main character.
Oh, so maybe I'm thinking of the other ending with the
So the one that they changed was they ended up being like, they don't stop freaking out, and they end up like headbutting their way through this glass thing, and he ends up like killing himself with a grenade to take out a few more zombies. It was going on a blaze of glory.
And then the national anthem plays and the credits roll.
And like the woman and the kid, the human kid that they're with, like they get away.
They go to
with
free
like
society.
this serum that he had developed to like go like stop it. And so like they find like another society, and it's like you get the mega happy.
They just went full boilerplate.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, by the way, there's a secret human colony over here.
Yeah,
we're good,
and we've got the cure, and we're gonna be living, and they're gonna live,
or it's gonna be okay.
And literally, I swear to God, if I might be wrong, but in my head, I swear to God, they like pan up and there's like school children playing.
Oh,
like,
I'm
and an
pretty
American
sure,
flag like flying in the sun, and I'm just like, what the hell?
Did you? Oh, and I really don't want to keep this much longer, but do you guys know the original ending to Dodgeball?
Oh, the bomb was inside of him?
What? No, so Dodgeball originally. You both seen Dodgeball?
Yeah,
the one with Ben Stiller and
and Vince Vaughn. So
is there another Dodgeball?
There should be. I think they're going to make one. But so the ending of Dodgeball, if you remember, they lose, but it's a technicality, so they get the one-on-one. I think he ends up losing anyway, and then they still get the money because a chest shows up and it says Deus Ex Machina on it, because obviously like that's exactly what that is, and they're just like, oh, we can still save the gym, and we bought yours, and blah blah blah, and everything's fucked. And then the credit roll, Ben Stiller is really fat and upset, and he's just bitching about movies and movie endings and how shitty American cinema is, because the actual ending was they lose, the gym shuts down, and it was just the realistic ending on that. Like,
so the studio told them to change it, and they were like,
they did.
We'll fucking change it.
Yeah,
How about
so
this?
they literally just went full bore on it, and
that's how you do it.
Cussed out the studio at the end. They're just like, it's bullshit, it's just money. Like, you try to like tell a compelling story, and everyone wants a fucking happy ending. And, like,
oh, you want to do this job? All right, here's how you do it then, right? Like,
that's exactly how it is. And he's just bitching about it, and he's totally right. Like, now watch that in that context, you're gonna be like, fuck, I get it now. And that's why the chest has Deus Ex Machina. They're like, oh yeah, of course, here's the fucking happy ending magically out of thin air.
Well, I mean, it's not like that's the first time that's been done. But in that context, that they had to change it. Like, it was on purpose in Wayne's World, which was the classic, where when the movie
that was spoofed,
it's like it ends with like the logical conclusion
like
of
4 or 5 different
them losing, but it ends like the logical conclusion is like everybody else wins except for them, and they're like, we can't end the movie like this.
Like, that's awful. There's
like, let's do the Scooby-Doo ending. And they do like this. They're like, no, that wasn't even good enough. Let's do the mega happy ending. All right,
All right.
So yeah,
And on that note, the mega happy ending of this podcast is
super
now-
happy. Enjoy fucking good storytelling, jerks.
Wow. I thought you really know how to alienate the audience.
And if you're still here, go play Firewatch. If you haven't, you shouldn't be here, but go do it. Anyway, do it
Write
again.
compelling stories and make cool shit.
Yeah.
We'll see you around the space soon.
Yeah, game space.
See ya.
Write a good story in your game. Space. Bye.